Welcome to our quick start guide for Shadow Priest and Mist of Pandaria. This video is going to cover everything that you need to know for setting up your character, which includes the best race, the best talents, glyphs, gear, professions, macros, and so much more. But first, let's talk about what's new and what to expect from your spec in PvP. What you should immediately know is that Shadow Priest plays like a true hybrid in MoB. You have a ton of responsibilities outside of doing damage, including off-healing, dispelling, gripping, the whole 9 yards. Being a good Shadow Priest is going to require you to pay attention to everything going on in Arena. Now, on the topic of damage though, Shadow Priest is more of kind of like a sub-rogue than anything else. Sure, you have dots, but they're really just accessories. Your real damage comes from pulling up a bunch of resources. Now, most importantly, Shadow Orbs. This is the defining feature of Shadow Priest in MoB. Orbs can be spent in 2 different ways, on Devouring Plague for damage, or on Psychic Horror for control. Much of the game is spent playing around your orbs and your instant CC, setting up kills with your team in a classic 3-2-1 fashion. Now, as we said a second ago, you're pretty much a sub-rogue in disguise. But before we start with all that, this is just the first part in our Mist of Pandaria series. Our complete courses, including healing, damage, and playstyle guides, they are all available exclusively at skillcap.com. For the past few months, we've been working alongside the best and the most dedicated players ever in Mist of Pandaria. And right now, you can get ahead of 90% of players instantly thanks to our revamped courses, which teach you literally everything you need to know. And that's why we continue to offer a 400 rating gain guarantee across all of our games. So whether you want to experience MoB Classic or hop into retail, be sure to click the discount link below in order to get started. But for now, let's get back to the video. Alright, so it is time to make the very first decision before you even step foot into the game. Picking your race. Racials, they matter a lot in Classic, and MoB is no different. Now, if you plan on playing Alliance, then Human is going to be best without question. In fact, for many DPS, this will be the best race in the entire game. Why is that? Well, thanks to the Will to Survive racial, humans are able to wear 2 damage trinkets, which is a really big deal since trinket procs and effects represent a massive power spike. Now, in the event you really don't want to play Alliance, then Undead is going to be your best bet for Horde. Will of the Forsaken is more relevant in MoB given the popularity of Warriors and Warlocks. Also, the casting animations, they're worth it on their own, right? Now, Troll is also an appealing choice as Berserking is much better in MoB compared to the modern expansion. This is definitely the more offensive option. But now, let's talk about talents and glyphs, which both received an overhaul going into the expansion and are now much more streamlined. Now, for our first row of talents, we're going to be playing Psyfiend the vast majority of the time, since it's really good for landing cross CC. Generally speaking, we're going to avoid Void Tendrils, since most of the time in 3v3, we should be playing with a mage. Dominate Mind can be a niche pick in some matchups, but it is hard to use since we're a very common kill target. Then for our next row, we're going to always play Angelic Feather. Having an 80% sprint is insanely useful as a caster, and it's going to make it much easier for us to kite and to land fears. Moving on to our level 45 talents, we're going to be playing From Darkness Comes Light most of the time, since it gives us instant Mind Spike procs, which are very important for damage. However, if we're going to be playing some 2v2 with a sub-rogue, we could play Mindbender instead, as its 1-minute cooldown is going to line up perfectly with Shadow Dance. Then, for our next row, we're going to play Spectral Guise most of the time. This is going to be great for landing fears, and it even acts as a defensive vanish when combined with shields. You could play Bulwark on this row too, however, but only if you're really struggling to survive. Next up, we're going to always play Divine Insight. This is arguably the most important talent that we have, giving us instant Mind Blast for quicker orb generation. And finally, for our last row, we do have a few options here. If you want the easiest to use and most consistent spell, then Divine Star is going to be recommended here. Note that it is on a completely separate spell school, so we can use it during Shadow lockouts. Now, with that said, Halo is technically the best for burst, but it is a little bit clunky to use and it has a chance at breaking CC. And finally, Cascade is a good choice, specifically in comps where you want to maximize AoE pressure. Now, as far as glyphs are concerned, let's break things down into a few categories here. Our only hardlock glyph is Fade, which adds 10% damage reduction to this spell. we're going to be the target a lot, so this is really going to be useful. Then we have 2 interchangeable softlock glyphs. As long as there's a melee on the enemy team, we're going to play Inner Fire. But if we're playing into double casters, we're going to use Inner Sanctum instead. We should always be playing with one of these depending on the matchup. Then we have a few flexible glyphs after that. As a default option, we could use Glyph of Prayer of Mending, which will make it easier to off-heal. However, against mages and paladins, we should use Glyph of Mass Dispel to remove Ice Block and Bubble. But now it's time to move on to the exciting bit of this course, gearing your character. Now, luckily, there is absolutely no PvE involved here. First, though, let's talk about our stat priority, which will affect the pieces that we buy and how we gem and enchant them. Intellect is going to be the most important stat by far, as it's going to affect our damage the most. But with that in mind, we need to make sure we're getting 6% hit so our spells don't miss. Then we're going to aim to get as much haste as humanly possible. This is not only going to add a ton of fluidity to our rotation, but it's also super important for damage. Up next is Crit, which is important for our burst. And then we have Mastery, which is going to be our worst secondary stat. Mop also introduces 2 new stats, PvP Resilience, which reduces damage taken from enemy players, and PvP Power, which increases healing and your damage done to other players. Both of these stats occur naturally on PvP gear and are the reason why all of your best in-slot gear is going to be from PvP. And while they are important, you really don't need to worry about them when gearing. Now, like most expansions, you're going to start by collecting full honor gear while gradually farming conquest gear every week to replace each slot with higher item level epics. Now, luckily, the stats on items offered in each slot are exactly the same. So with that in mind, let's break down our BIS lists. For our main pieces, we're going to wear everything from the Satin set, with the exception of gloves, which will be Mooncloth. Then we're going to want to get the Alacrity neck, Cloak of Cruelty, Bracers of Prowess, Belt of Accuracy, Boots of Alacrity, and then the Rings of Meditation and Accuracy. Then for our weapons, we're going to be using the one-handed dagger or mace with the in-game offhand. You're going to wear 2 PvP trinkets no matter what because of their resilience set bonus. As human, we're going to wear double damage trinkets. Just be sure to buy the ones with intellect. Then, as any other race, we're going to play the PvP medallion with crit, along with the insignia trinket for damage. Luckily, enchants are pretty streamlined in MoP. For our weapon and offhand, we're always going to use Jade Spirit and Major Intellect. Then, for our high-ticket enchants, we're going to get the Greater Crane Wing inscription on our shoulders, and then the Greater Pearlescent Spell Thread on our legs, since Spirit gets converted to hit. Then, going through our minor enchants, unless we're a tailor, we're going to get Superior Intellect on our cloak, and no matter what, we're going to get Glorious Stats on our chest, and Super Intellect on our bracers. Then we're going to get the Greater Haste on our gloves, and finally, Pandaren Step on our boots. And as far as gems are concerned, we're actually looking to maximize haste here. In red sockets, we're going to use Reckless Vermilion Onyx. In yellows, Quick Sun's Radiance. And finally, in blues, we're going to use Energized Wild Jade for Spirit and Haste. Then, for our meta gem, we're going to get the Burning Primal Diamond for maximum damage, but as a niche pick against casters, we can play the optional Spell Reflect meta gem. Doing so is going to cause us to lose some damage, but potentially make some game-winning plays with some good RNG. And don't forget here, you get an extra prismatic socket in your belt with the Living Steel Belt Buckle. So once you have everything geared and enchanted, be sure to head over to the Reforger to fine-tune your stats. Our goal here is to make sure we reach our 6% hit cap first, and then getting as much haste as we can, prioritizing removing Mastery first. But now, let's talk about professions, which are very important in Mist of Pandaria. Now, as a Shadow Priest, you should always be tailoring, which offers a unique cloak enchant that can proc an extra 2,000 intellect for 15 seconds, which is absurdly strong for snapshotting dots. For our second profession, we're going to get Herbalism of all things, since haste is our best secondary stat, and we can use this as a mini burst cooldown. But with that said, if you aren't playing human, you could instead go engineering to have another mini burst cooldown with Synapse Springs. Now, normally we would give you some macros here, but to make things even easier, we have got everything you need on our article site. There you can copy and paste each macro one by one instead of needing to manually type in-game. But before we go, you really don't want to miss this opportunity to get a massive head start on the competition with our 400 rating gain guarantee. Our courses and arena commentaries, they literally have everything you need to help you reach your goals. Regardless of how easy or how hard your class is to play, we've got you covered here. So head on over to skillcap.com and sign up today to start your journey to Gladiator.